What do you do when two financial experts have opposite opinions? One says, take Social Security right away. Another says, delay it as long as possible. One says, buy annuities, they'll solve all your problems. The other says, avoid them at all costs. What happens when you have two people with credentials, with letters behind their names, with expertise that say literally the opposite things? Who do you trust? Who do you believe? How do you know which one is right? That's what we want to talk about today, right? I'm Freeman Linde. I'm one of these experts, as they say, right? Certified financial planner, enrolled agent, actually working with clients to help them retire successfully and stay successfully retired. And I've got takes, I've got opinions, and those are different often than some of the other ones that you're going to hear. You're going to see some clashes here. So how do we know which is right? Because if you don't know how to tell which expert you should believe, you get more confusion, more bad products, more missed opportunities, and overall less confidence in your retirement. But once you know who to listen to, then you've got more confidence, more clarity, better decisions, and a better overall financial life. And so today we want to dive into what happens when financial experts disagree and how do we address that. So here we go. So the main thing that I think I want to say, right, is not all disagreements are because of dishonesty or because someone's a crook or anything like that, right? Sometimes it's just different incentives, different audiences, different assumptions, all these things. And so we want to dive into all the different reasons why they might disagree. So let's just dive into it here. Let's pull up our handy dandy chart here. And so I guess number one that these people may disagree, right, is that there are things called conflicts of interest. Right? And that basically just means look at how these people are paid. Conflicts. There we go. Look at how these people are paid, right? Ask before anything else, right? Ask, how is this person paid? Why might they be saying what they're saying? Because when you know what the conflicts of interest are, why their incentives, why they're saying what they may say, it really matters, right? If someone is saying, hey, buy this product, and then you find out that they get paid thousands of dollars to sell it, does that skew why they might be saying it's a good idea? Right? Are they saying it's a good idea because it's truly in your best interest or because it's in the best interest of their wallet? At the same time, if you have someone else who says, hey, do this, put your money in this financial product, and they get paid no more to recommend that one over a different one, then there's less of an incentive, right? There's less of a conflict there. And so you always want to know, hey, what are their incentives? What are their conflicts of interest? Why are they saying what they're saying? And you just, once you know this, right, when you know someone's conflicts of interest, when you know why they're saying what they're saying, right, it results in more clarity, more transparency, more confidence that you are getting the right advice, and you have a better ability just to spot sales and sales tactics and those kind of things. And if you don't understand conflicts of interest, then you run the risk of buying more expensive products, bad strategies, things that are not truly in your best interest, but are really meant for someone else. And so you really got to know, number one, what are the conflicts of interest that they may, and that may be, just knowing that alone, it solves many of the differences in why certain experts will disagree, right? And so again, myself, I'm a fee-only fiduciary, right? I always act in the best interest of my clients. I don't sell any products. Someone else may also have CFP in their name and may say that whole life insurance or annuities are awesome, right? You're like, well, hey, you're both CFPs. How do I know which one? Well, again, I could do those things, but I don't, and they get paid thousands of dollars to recommend them, right? And so they get paid more upfront to recommend these products. And is that the reason that they're doing it? We don't know for sure, but that could be it. And it could be as simple as knowing their conflicts of interest. So that is where, number one, just know the conflicts of interest. Reason number two, bad comparisons. So bad comps. And this just means that, hey, sometimes they'll say you should do something and they'll compare it to something that doesn't really apply. So they'll say things like, Warren Buffett does this. Okay, well, you're not a multi-billionaire, so I guess I don't know that it matters as much what Warren Buffett does because we're not Warren Buffett, right? Or banks do this, billionaires do this, large institutions invest their money this way. Well, again, if an expert is using that as an example for why you as an individual should do these things, I don't think that applies, right? What an institution that borrows money from other people or has plenty of money put into it from other people does with that money is completely different than what you as an individual, you as a retiree or nearing retirement, does with yours. And so just because they are making comparisons, it doesn't mean that they are a good one. And so that can often be, the experts will lean on institutions or professionals or other things that have a certain way of doing things, and it's just not a good comparison. Okay, reason number 3 is just differences in opinion. Sometimes that's all it comes down to, right? There are no facts about the future, right? There are no facts about the future. So sometimes in financial advice, right, we're trying to say, hey, this is what we think is going to happen in the future. And since there aren't any facts about that yet, we don't really know who's right and who's wrong. And so, whether it's differences in opinion on international versus domestic investing, real estate versus equities, growth versus value, if anything around future market returns, right? You're going to have experts, credentialed experts, clashing all the time on these things because it's the future and it's just their opinion and we don't know what's going to happen. You can't prove something about the future. And so I think if you kind of understand this, that hey, some of these things are just differences of opinion and their expertise, right? And an opinion can be expertly formed versus naively formed. So that counts for something. But sometimes it is just opinions. And so that, I think it gives us more humility, more patience, more ability to stick with the plan. We just know that, hey, some of this stuff is just different opinions. But at the same time, you got to stick with one. We can't keep jumping back and forth from different opinions. You can't one week say, hey, I'm just going to only invest domestically, and another week decide, you know what, actually this person's right. I should really diversify into separate baskets. You got to have one. And so that's where some of it is understanding, hey, the difference between these two experts is just opinion. Which opinion do I like better? Which one seems to fit more with what I want to do with my money? That's the opinions I'm going to listen to. Okay, so reason number 4. Different audiences. Different audiences. Right? And you'll get this a lot with people because you'll have different experts that say different things. And really ask yourself, is this advice for the general public or is it for me specifically? Right? Because a national expert might say something because they're talking to everyone. Right? They're talking to people who make $30,000 and have nothing in savings, all the way to people who have $30 million and make $1 million a year. Right? And so what you have to say to the general public might not apply to you as a specific person. Right? So again, a national expert might say, delay Social Security. Well, again, there's something like 2/3 of Americans don't have anything saved for retirement. I just pulled that stat out of nowhere, so don't take that to heart. But look up stats on the amount of people that have anything saved for retirement, the amount of like 50-plus-year-olds that have nothing saved or very little saved for retirement. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, if you have nothing saved for retirement, delaying Social Security might make a lot of sense, right? Or avoiding debt. Again, most people are really bad with debt. So if you're just going to make a blanket statement, that's probably the correct one to use. And a lot of people, again, if you're talking to a national audience, it's better to just use broad rules of thumb and give general broad advice than specific personalized advice for your situation because they don't know it, right? And so they have to talk in large averages and on all these things to make it correct. So for example, Social Security, right? If you are talking to everyone, we just talked about that. If you're talking to everyone and most people don't have anything saved for retirement, are you better off telling people to take it right away and potentially then be only living on Social Security and have that be a smaller amount? Or if that's all they're going to have to live on, are you better off telling people to wait as long as possible to get a larger thing? I think you should, as a national speaker, err more towards that one. And that's why many experts will say, hey, delay Social Security, get 8% compounding, all these different things, right? And they'll have a bunch of reasons for it. But really, it depends on a lot of other things, right? It depends on your taxes, on your other income that you have, on your different income sources, on where the market's at any given time, right? When you're going to claim it. And so there's actually a lot more that goes into Social Security than just longevity. But if you're talking to a broad audience, then you're best off making the safest bet. And so that's why some people say, well, hey, I heard this expert say that you should delay it. Okay, again, was that because they were talking to a broad audience, or did this expert say this to you specifically, right? And then again, you might have one expert say to you specifically, and that's just a different opinion than the other expert that said it to you specifically. So any advice that's specific to your situation by an expert is generally going to trump general advice given by general experts to the general public, if that makes sense. So hopefully that makes sense. The other one, so number 5 here, we'll go back to our list. Reason number 5 why experts might disagree is they have different goals. Just different goals, right? Often experts are optimizing for different outcomes. And if you don't realize that the goal they're going for is different, then it might lead you to follow advice that is not actually where you want to go. So let me give you some common examples, right? Like take Dave Ramsey. I love Dave Ramsey. I love what he's doing. I think he is a massive net positive for America, for society in general. And there's a lot of experts that disagree with some of his takes, right? There's a lot of experts that say, hey, it doesn't make sense to pay off 3% debt when you can invest and make 10%, or a bunch of other things, right? Or even if you're paying off debt, it makes more sense to pay off the high interest rate stuff instead of low balance, versus mathematically makes more sense. So you have a lot of experts that disagree with Dave Ramsey, who's also somewhat of an expert himself. Obviously, he's built something massive doing this. But again, what is the goal? Right? If you look at his main flagship program, his main flagship class, it's called Financial Peace University. Right? Think about that. Financial Peace University, not highest net worth university, not leverage other people's money university, not maximize investments university. It's Financial Peace University. The goal is financial peace, right? And one of the best ways to have financial peace is to pay off your debt. And then one of the best ways to do that is to start with the littlest balance and snowball it and all these other things, right? And so there's all these other things, and you will build wealth and you will do all these other things, but the main goal is financial peace. And that's why when you have other experts that say, no, that doesn't make sense, don't do it this way, do it that way, like they're optimizing for a different goal. They're optimizing for net worth or for highest investments or whatever else, which is different than financial peace. Right? And neither goal is necessarily better than the other, right? I know a lot of people have higher net worths and have no peace about their finances at all. And I don't know that you can necessarily say, hey, they're better than the people who have a lower net worth but have absolute peace of mind about it, right? They're just different goals. One's not better than the other. But you got to know, what are you optimizing for? What is your goal before you follow one advice over another? Or take the example of like Die with Zero. Right, it's a popular book. I actually really like the book. And the goal is to not leave anything to your kids. Basically nothing. Like spend most of it, enjoy most of it while you're alive. Right? And if that's really your goal, is to truly die with zero, then there's a lot of advice in that book that you should follow. But if it's kind of like, hey, the general idea, the premise is good, I should spend more money on myself, I should enjoy and give it more while I'm alive than wait and give it when I'm dead. Love that, right? And you can follow some of those general guidelines without all this specific advice that would literally have you die with zero, right? Or what about the goal of pay zero taxes in retirement? Okay, that's a goal. And you can follow, some experts have the advice to literally have you pay no taxes in retirement. And that's a goal. That's different than paying the least amount of taxes total, which is also different than having the most amount of money after tax, right? That's kind of the whole premise of this book, right? Is that my goal for my clients is not to pay the least amount of taxes. Instead, it's to have the most amount of money after paying taxes, both last year, long-term, lifetime, and legacy taxes, right? Where is all this stuff going? Who's paying the taxes, and how do we minimize those things and maximize the amount of after-tax money we have? Right? And that's a different goal than paying nothing in retirement. No taxes in retirement. Personally, I don't think that's a good goal, because you're going to pay more taxes overall earlier on and have less money after taxes doing it that way. But that is a goal. You could do that, right? Protect principal. If your only goal is to protect your principal and not grow your income to keep up with inflation or do a lot of the other things that I talk about in this book, right? Where say, hey, your principal problem is not the temporary decline in your value of your assets. It's the constant increasing of the prices of everything that you need and want to buy. And so protecting principal is a different goal than having a successful retirement, right? And so again, what's the goal? What are they actually trying to get you to? And if we don't think critically about the goal that that expert is promoting, then you can see why there'd be some confusion in why they would disagree, right? So the best advice depends on the goal behind the advice. So hopefully that makes sense. Different goals can really skew experts' advice one way or another. Okay, so how do you decide who to trust? Well, again, since we'll go back to our list here, right? So here's some of the reasons, right? One, conflicts of interest might be a reason. So how are they getting paid? What are they selling? What conflicts? Why might they be telling me this over something else? We got to know what our conflicts of interest are. Are they making comparisons that are just completely irrelevant in the advice that they're giving, in the expertise that they're dishing out? Or do they have just a different opinion, and that's why it's different? Are they talking to a different audience? Are you listening to someone who has a broad audience, or someone whose audience is very hyper-specific to you, or you specifically? Right? That's going to be different. And are the goals that they are preaching, are the goals behind the advice that they're giving, aligned with your goals? Because if they're not, then we don't listen to them. Or maybe you should change your goals, because maybe their goals are better for your money than your goals are. And that's fine. But one of the main reasons a lot of experts will disagree is they have different goals for where they are trying to get it. So what happens if we kind of go back and think about this? Why does this matter? Why am I ranting about experts disagreeing? And part of it, right, is because some people say, I'll give advice and we're like, well, hey, I heard this from here, right? So I get a fair amount of, I heard so-and-so say this, or, what do you think about that? And most people will say, hey, once they hear what I have to say, like, oh yeah, that makes more sense, and it makes more sense in my context. That's why a lot of people like having financial advisors, right? Because they're like, hey, here's all the general advice. What does it mean for me? And so I think that's helpful. But it really matters what happens if you follow generic advice blindly, or whether you get specific personalized advice, right? So if we kind of use let's use a matrix here. It's our good, bad, more or less matrix. And we'll say, hey, what's the difference between following generic advice versus personalized planning? So we'll put personalized planning in purple and generic advice in blue, right? And if we do these things, right, certain things might have more bad stuff or less good stuff, or it may add more good stuff or less bad stuff, right? So we have bad on this side, good on this side, more and less. Obviously, more bad is worse, so that's why these are both red, and less good is worse. More good is better, less bad is also better, right? So these are good boxes, these are not, if that makes sense. Right, so if you're just following generic advice, right? Well, then typically you're going to have more confusion. Again, where it's like, hey, this person said this and this person said that. Who do I listen to? I don't know, and it makes it confusing. That's where a lot of people, when they try to do their own planning or try to do a bunch of research, Google a bunch of things, read a bunch of conflicting advice, they end up doing nothing because it's confusing. It's just confusing. Hey, I heard this from this person, I heard this from this person, and I didn't know what to do, right? More second guessing, where even after you've made a decision, if you can get past the confusion and actually make a decision, how confident are you in that decision? Or are you staying up at night thinking about it, right? More mismatched strategies. Oops, I mismatched strategy. There we go. Whereas, hey, you're kind of doing this over here with this chunk of money, and you're doing this over here with this chunk of money, and technically they're in conflict with each other. But you don't really realize that because you're trying to follow different advice and the advice itself is in conflict, right? More products generally, I find that people who are just getting general advice or advice from people who are not truly experts in everything, because that'd be another thing, right? And that could be a whole nother reason, right? Is the expertise actually comprehensive? Or is this person an expert in product sales? Someone can be an expert in product sales, which is different than financial expert in general, right? And so like, right, I know a lot of people who are really good people who sell a lot of really crappy products because they just don't know any better. There's nothing malicious about it. They think it's a great idea, a great strategy, but it's all they know. So more product sales. And I think more of a chance of optimizing, whatever, for the wrong goal. Where you are doing a lot of stuff and you're barking up the wrong tree. It's not actually helping you get to what you want it to do, right? It's not helping you achieve your goals, right? And so the other thing is like less good stuff, right? If we're getting generic advice, so we're gonna have less clarity, which is also bad. So it's less good stuff. So clarity is a good thing, but we have less of it following general advice, right? Less confidence. Confidence is a good thing, but we have less of it following generic advice. Less personalization. Right? We're trying to follow target date funds are the ultimate example of just a cookie cutter strategy that you can shovel mass amounts of people into it that all have completely different circumstances, but it's just an easy button, and it's a terrible strategy, right? But it's because you have less personalization doing that way, right? And less alignment with your actual life and dreams. And so that's what following generic advice does, right? If, on the other hand, you're getting personalized planning from experts that actually know you, or at least are giving expert advice to people in your very specific situation, then of course we get more clarity. Because it's very specific to you, right? More confidence, all these good things that we had less of if we got it before. Confidence, there we go. Can't spell. I'm better with numbers. More goal alignment, right? A lot of the advice I give to clients is the same, right? Because there's some of the stuff that's just good advice that applies to everyone. But sometimes it's different. I might say to this person, do this, and I might say the exact opposite to this person because, again, they have different goals. And sometimes I push back on people's goals. Sometimes people have the goal of, I want to protect my principal and I never want to see it going down. And I think that's a bad goal. I think protecting your purchasing power is far more important than protecting your principal. And so I'm going to push back on that goal, if that's your goal, and try to give you a better one. And the way we do that, often a lot of people say, yes, wow, actually I do like that better. You know, that makes more sense. That's a better goal. Let's go with that one. Okay, perfect. But then other things are like, okay, that's your goal and this is your goal. Perfect. We can get you advice that helps with both of those. All right. More tax coordination. Coordination. Forgive any spelling errors in here. All right. Because sometimes it's like, hey, the generic advice is do this, but in your specific situation, it causes a lot of extra taxes. And so that's why we are a, certified financial planner, global financial expert, plus enrolled agent, specific tax expert, right? How do we integrate taxes into everything we do? Good financial planning can do that for you. So more tax coordination with your specific, and that's something that, right, you can have two people that both have $1 million, both 60, but their taxes are wildly different because of a whole bunch of other factors, and you need that tax coordination, right? More retirement income. Generally, if people are getting specific advice, they just have more retirement income, better retirement results, right? And of course, more peace of mind. Even if it's nothing else to say, hey, I'm trying to do this. Does that make sense? Am I doing the right thing? Yes, you are. That is a good strategy. Okay, perfect. That's worth something, right? And then, of course, less bad stuff. We've got, of course, less confusion. Wow, that's totally wrong. But less random advice. It's where a lot of people, again, they get stuck because they're hearing all kinds of advice from all kinds of people, and it's just all random. Less chasing opinions, where you're constantly double checking and double guessing Am I doing the right things? Opinions. There we go. And less fear from conflicting headlines. Right? If you've got personal planning, you kind of know what's coming. You know how you're going to react to anything that does come. Right? You just have less fear overall. And of all these different opinions, hey, this expert says the market's going to crash. This expert says it's going to go up. What do I do? Doesn't matter. We're prepared for either way. Right? And so generally, right, experts are going to disagree. They are. Like, you're just going to find people who have different opinions, different audiences, different goals, different conflicts of interest. They're going to disagree. But ultimately, I think the main takeaway for you is that you want to take financial advice. You can get a lot of financial education by listening to different experts, but you want to take financial advice from someone who knows you and your goals and your situation. Right? Because the best advice is not the loudest advice. It's the advice that fits your life the best. And so if you want to see if your retirement plan has gaps, and if you can, then you can take our free retirement scorecard, which I think we have a link in our thing, or you can go to retirementorship.com/scorecard and see that right in there. And otherwise, you can, of course, always get either my books by becoming a Retire member, and that's where we'll send either of those 2 books I mentioned earlier to you for free. And you can continue to increase your financial acumen from at least one financial expert here who has takes. And you might disagree with some of them, and that's okay. You're wrong. But hopefully that helps and is helpful to you, just to kind of, as you see different people who disagree on different things. Thanks for watching. Stay the course. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.